Hello and welcome to the character models and animations tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be going over where and how you can get character models and then how you can apply animations to them. So the first thing that we should go over is that there's lots of places to get your character models from. You could start here on the Unity Asset Store. This is definitely one of the easiest ways that you can find a character model. If you start here on the home page at assetstore.unity.com, you can come over to 3D and then characters. And this will display a nice selection of characters for you. Okay, you can organize by the price, ratings, version, platform, and whether or not they're on sale. So for us, we're just going to go over to the free assets. All right, and over here I could sort by something like popularity, or you could do rating as well. See, there's pages and pages of these character models for you to use. Now what you want to do is take a look at the information directly. So for example, if I wanted this guy, the cyborg character, I have him opened up over here, and down here in the description, it says the cyborg character already comes with textures and 20 animations ready for use in game. The skeleton is already configured with the Unity mechanism. So that means that we know that this character is not only modeled, but it comes with animations, and it supports Unity's mechanism animation system. That's a nice start. That means that this thing already has a lot to work with, and you could pretty much just drag and drop it. But two things come to mind. First of all, what if you want other animations that are not included in the 20 provided here, right? And what about models that don't come with that? What if this model didn't even come with a rig and animation setup? Well, let's figure some of that out too. So over here at kenny.nl, these are Kenny's free assets. So if you go to kenny.nl, go to the assets page and then select 3D right here. This will show you all these free assets, totally free to use for your game. I'm gonna go ahead and select this animated characters pack. You can see this one comes with 3 animations. So that means that it's already rigged as well. Okay, now the difference between getting something from Kenny versus the Asset Store is that if you're logged into your account here on the Asset Store, I can simply click Add to my assets and accept this. Okay, and it's added to my assets. Now here in Unity, I can come up to Window, Package Manager, and as long as I'm in this category right here, My Assets, okay, make sure that you're looking at this category. In My Assets, I have my cyborg character here. Okay, it automatically shows up, and then I can just hit Download. Okay, and after that's downloaded, now we can import it into our project. So you'll see down here the button has changed. I can import, and it tells me the name of the folder, and it shows me all the files that it's going to import. So you can see that when this is imported, we'll have a folder in our assets called Cyborg. That's what this is called. Okay, so I'm going to hit import, close this, and you'll see down here we have our Cyborg folder now. And in here we can see that we have the model, the Cyborg base. Okay, so if I select it, and over here the inspector, I could see it right here. But you can just click and drag to look around it. Note that the cyborg is in the T-pose. Okay, so the reason you want this is because when you make models and you want to apply rigs and animations to them, there's a sort of universally accepted format to rigging characters, that is to have their 2 legs straight down in front of them and then their arms out to the sides in the shape of a T, hence T-pose. And this just helps keep some sort of uniformity when rigging the characters, especially with automated tools, which I'll be showing you in just a moment. Okay, so we have in the models the base, and then it comes with a pistol. Okay, that's fine. So, and in animations, now we have all of these, and there's nothing really over here, right? There's nothing to look at. These are just animation files. But when I select them, you can see down here, let me just put this tab like that. When I select one of these, you could see the full name here is cyborgidle.fbx. Okay, so these are all FBX files. FBX files are like little packages that you could put multiple things in. You could put models and animations and other sort of information common in 3D applications, sometimes like lights and cameras. So if I press this little drop-down menu, you can see that it comes with this rig, which looks like just an empty root object that has a transform, right? So that means it's kind of like an empty game object. And then this little triangle is an animation file. It's an animation clip. Okay, so when I have that selected, you can see up here in the inspector, it's an animation clip. And if I select this cyborg idle, the root of it, and you can see that we have our little cyborg guy here. If I press play, you can see the idle animation playing. All right, now that's what all of these are. This is a very common way of having your animation set up. So if I go back to the cyborg, you just have materials, okay? So this is the materials for the actual model. This is the texture for the material, right? So a material is the actual shader that's being put onto the model. And here in the albedo channel, you can see that it's using, if I click this, it highlights this texture here. This texture is just an image, okay? And this is what it looks like. So this gets laid out in such a way that when you apply the material onto the model, it'll look like this guy. Those are animations, materials, models. And then the scenes folder is probably just a demo scene that has that character set up. Okay, so this is how you import from the Unity store. You can see how easy that was. We just clicked add it to my assets and then we imported it into Unity. Over here on the Kenny assets, or honestly anywhere else you might be getting your 3D models from, like itch.io, this is another good resource. So coming over to your browse button, changing the category from games to game assets, then you could put in a tag here like 3D and add another tag like character. Okay, so now it shows you all these 3D character models. So this is the same sort of situation as the Kenny page where you have a download button right here. So if I press download, it prompts me with this download window where I could save into my assets or some other folder here in my assets. I'll do that right now. So in this 04_models folder, that's just a folder I've created myself. Inside here, I'm going to create another folder called downloaded models. Okay, so I could make a little separate folder for the models that maybe I'm making by hand myself versus the models that I'm getting from asset stores. Okay, so I'm going to select this downloaded models, and that's where I'm going to save these Kenny characters. And that's the same thing here on itch. So if I grab this little low poly scout character and I press download now, so this is a free asset, but it does prompt you to donate a couple bucks to the creator, which for a lot of these creators is advisable if you can, but if you can't, then that's no problem. And they say, no thanks, just take me to the downloads. Okay, and that's where you have your download button. So same thing, I'm going to save this into my downloaded models and hit save. All right, so these are ways that you could download 3D models. Now back in here, I'm going to go to the models folder, into my downloaded models, and you can see that the Scout that I downloaded is a GLB file, which actually Unity can't read. So you need to make sure that the type of models you're importing are readable by Unity. So if I select my animated characters from Kenny, down here you can see it's animated characters 1.zip. So this is a .zip file. A zip file is like an encrypted folder, kind of puts a bunch of things into one file, and this is a common way of distributing assets. Now, if I try to just drag and drop this, it doesn't let me. So this looks like it's unreadable as well. This GLB, I know that as of right now, Unity doesn't support the GLB format, but a .zip doesn't necessarily mean that Unity doesn't support it. It's just that we need to unpack this first. So I'm going to right click on the zip. I'm going to do show in Explorer. Now, if you're on Mac, this will be show in Finder. Okay, and now it just brings up the folder with our models here. I can right click on this and extract here or extract to, and then it'll create a folder named after the file. So I'm going to do that one, extract to animated characters, or just unzip using whatever means you have available to you. Okay, so we just unzip this, and now we have a folder, and in this folder, you can see that we have a very similar thing. We have animations, models, skins, and then we have a Unity package as well. So I'm going to come back to Unity. This is going to update, so now we actually have a folder full of these things. Thankfully, what's cool is you could just import this Unity package. So this animated characters, if I double click it, this will prompt me to import the characters, and it'll give me everything we need. It'll create a folder hierarchy and everything. I'm not going to do that right now because I want to show you how you can take things on your own and give them their own animations from somewhere else. Okay, so I'm just going to close this. Now I'm going to go back to this folder over here with models, and now we have this character medium, and you'll see down here this is character medium.fbx. A .fbx is a very accepted format for Unity. So if I just drag and drop this character medium out into the scene, you can see we have this guy all set up right here. Okay, and again, he's in a T pose. If I come over here and do the little drop down, you'll see that we just have this mesh renderer, which is just to say the mesh that is being used for the body. A root game object, that's just a transform, so this is just an empty game object. And as a child of it, we have all of these joint positions, okay? So you'll see that these are all empties that represent the joints of the body. Okay, so all of those joints underneath this root are being referenced by this skinned mesh renderer here. So you can see down here in the root bone, that's where we have this hips control transform. So that's this thing right here. So what if I wanted to add animations to this model? Well, I'm just going to delete it from the scene right now. Okay, this is just a model with no animations to it. It is rigged up, and it is T-posed, I'm going to come over to Mixamo.com. So this is a free site that you can sign up for. I'm just going to log in. And now in Mixamo, what I can do is come over to this Upload Character button. So I'm going to hit Upload Character. I could select a character file to drag here. Something to point out really quick is just that it accepts these FBXs, OBJs, and zips. Okay, there's some more information on how to prepare your model that you can read here, but this is mostly going to go over what I was just talking about in concerns to having your own rig versus your model and things being contained in zips. So I'm going to select the character file here. And now in my downloaded models, go to my characters, model, and we have the character medium FBX. So I'm going to select that. It's going to process it. Now, because our character already had a rig in it, right? This character has the root with all those transforms. So when I put that in here, you could see that we have the root with all these transforms, right? So this was already rigged for us. Because it was already rigged for us, Mixamo already knew what to do with that information. It was immediately able to read that. This animation is being played from Mixamo. So if I hit next, it says your 3D character has been uploaded, proceed with this new character, your previous character will not be saved. Just want to point out that when you're using Mixamo, if you were getting animations for some other character model, that character model gets removed because you can only do one at a time here. It's not too big of a deal because you can always just upload again, but yeah, one at a time. So I'm gonna hit next. It just shows T-pose at first, but now you have Mixamo's entire library of animations available to you. You could select this little old man idle, all right, or this reaction, jumping down, and all that good stuff. Now there's some more things to talk about here with these parameters, but first what I want to show you is how to import if you don't have a rig already set up. So I'm just going to come over to Blender so I could take this model apart really quick. I'm just going to hit A to select everything, delete to remove everything. I'm going to come over here to File, Import, FBX, and I'm going to find my model right here, Character Medium. I'm going to hit Import. So here's my model. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of everything except for the mesh. So I'm just going to delete this root. Now if I look in here, it has some modifiers. I'm going to get rid of those too. Okay, these vertex groups, those are just in here. Get rid of everything so it doesn't have any information. This isn't totally necessary, but I want to show you what a completely empty object looks like. Okay, so this just has the mesh. So this is just a mesh, no rigging whatsoever, nothing special about it. So now I can go to File, Export, FBX, and now in my models, I'm going to go into Downloaded Models, and into Animated Characters, and into Model. But instead of putting Character Medium, I'm just going to type in Character Medium No Rig. I'm going to hit Export FBX. So now in Unity, we have this Character Medium No Rig. So if I drag and drop this in, first of all, you'll notice that the material has changed. It's not a big deal. We can see this for now. I could just go Create Material Temp Skin. And we'll just put that on our character so we can see him. Okay. But otherwise, if you select our Character Medium No Rig, there's nothing in it. Just a mesh renderer. Okay. No child game objects in this one. So if we go to Mixamo now, go Upload Character, select the character file, and select Character Medium No Rig. It's going to process it. And this time, we're faced with this auto rigger. And what the auto rigger allows us to do is to rig a character that doesn't have a rig, but without having to really expertly have a handle on some 3D program to actually apply all the joints inside of the model. So what it asks you to do first is to make sure that your character is in a T-pose and that is facing towards you. Okay, so it's a little hard to see because it's gray on gray, but this character is facing us right now. You can see the thumbs right here. If I hit this little rotate button, you can see that they're spinning around. You can also hit this rotate, which is on the Y-axis, which spins them around. So now they're facing this way, right? They're facing to our right. Now we're looking at the back. Now they're facing to our left. And now they're facing towards us again. Okay, so this is what we want. I'm gonna hit next. And then it puts this line down the middle. So you could look at this as your reference. This is where it wants you to place things. The bottom of the circle is lining up nicely with the bottom of her chin. So that's where I'm gonna put this. Line it up nicely with the bottom of the chin. The wrists, the center dot is nicely resting on the wrist there. And the elbows, we'll put it right here. It seems good. The knees, same thing. And the groin, you can see that the bottom of the circle lines up nicely with right at the edge of the body, at the bottom of the groin. Now, if your character isn't symmetrical, you could uncheck this symmetry box. You shouldn't have to worry about this skeleton so much. If your character doesn't have any fingers, you could select this. That can help reduce the amount of joints that are being put into the character. Or if you know that your character has 3 chain fingers versus 2 chain, you could select those. But we're going to be fine with this standard skeleton right now. So I'm going to hit next. And we're going to wait for this auto rigger to process. All right, so it looks like it has maintained that weird transparent material from Blender, but you can more or less see our sort of ghost person here has been rigged and is fully animatable now. So I'm going to hit next, and we're just going to say next. We would like to proceed. Okay. And you can see now that if I select this dying animation, it all applies very nicely. Okay, so that's how you can use Mixamo even if your character doesn't have a rig. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is the animation parameters here in Mixamo. It does change depending on which animation you've chosen. For this dying animation, we have the direction, overdrive, character arm space, and trim. Now this direction, you'll see that when our character falls, their head is sort of falling right here, okay? But if I put it all the way to this side, they fall closer towards this way. If I put it all the way to this side, they fall over here. And that just scales as you go. So if I slid it a little bit down, they're a little closer this way. More down, it's going to probably land over here, closer again, etc. Okay, so that's for the direction of this fall. A lot of these just require you to play with them to see what looks good. Now the overdrive, what this is it just cuts frames or extends the frame distance in the animation. You could see that overdrive being set all the way to the left puts the character in slow motion. This isn't necessarily adding new frames, it's just stretching the animation out. And if you put it all the way to the right, it squishes the frames into a smaller distance, which for the most part would probably mean that there are frames actually being cut. So you end up with something that has less temporal resolution. And what that means is that if you want to extend it later on in your game, the animation might look a little jankier. So if you put overdrive over here in the middle, this is just the standard animation, of course. Now the character arm space, this is something that comes with a lot of them. This is just how far in your character's hands go. Because sometimes you have real beefy characters that need more space, and you need to put this all the way to the other side, so their hands are like out. And this is just a way to compensate for all that. Okay, so somewhere in the middle, usually you're fine. The trim allows you to just trim the animation, right? So you could change the starting point to start later and the end point to end sooner. But what I would suggest is that you use trim to see if the animation can suit you well, right? So you can kind of get an idea of it, but that if it does work and you choose to download it, that you just put it back to normal and you download it and then trim those frames in Unity instead. That way you have more to work with and you aren't stuck with this trimmed animation. Okay, so consider trim a sort of taste testing feature, but you should get the whole animation when you want to download it. So those are the parameters that you can adjust for that. But if you search something like walk, and you select this walking animation, you can see that by default, it actually has the character walking through space. They start right here and they end up over here. This is a very important thing to notice because when you're actually programming the game, more often than not, you're going to want an animation to be in place, and that's what this option is over here. So if I select this box, you'll see that they stay still with this animation now. And like I said, it's more often than not that you're going to want something that keeps them in place and allows you to sort of program them to move through space instead. This mirror option, if I select it, it's a very subtle difference, but they've essentially flipped. That animation is facing the other way. You can see that their head sort of tilts off to the left. If I uncheck this mirror, now it tilts off to the right. It's a very subtle thing for some of these, but it's more apparent in other things where if you have a character swinging a punch or kicking or whatever, and you want to change from their left hand to their right hand or whatever it is, mirror could come in handy. So let's start with this walk animation. I'm going to hit download, and the options it gives me for downloading are the format, so we could download on all these FBXs, whether or not we want skin, the frames per second, and keyframe reduction. Now, we basically don't have to pay attention to most of this. Whether or not you get it with skin, it doesn't really matter. And in this format, this is mostly what you want to focus on because it gives you FBX binary by default. But for our purposes, importing it to Unity, we have this FBX for Unity option. So I'm going to select that, and then you hit download. Now I could have this downloaded models, our animated characters folder. I'm going to go to animations. And what I'm going to do here is actually create a new folder. So I'm going to right click, new folder, and call this imported FBXs. Okay. And in this folder is where I'm going to save these animations. So I'm going to hit save. And let's just get one more. We'll have it as idle. Okay. And we'll just get this one. Okay. I'm going to hit download. Make sure it's FBX for Unity, hit download, and save it. Now in Unity, that imports. I can go to my animated characters, animations, and imported FBXs. Now the reason I wanted this imported FBXs folder as a subfolder of animations is so we could better organize our files, because it can get a little unwieldy when you have two files that look like they're named the same thing. So what I mean by this is, first of all, I'm just going to delete this character medium and this character medium. Okay, so we just have a nice empty scene here. Now in our imported FBXs, I'm going to go in here. To start with, you could seriously just drag and drop one of these FBXs into the scene. Okay. Now more often than not, I just choose the idle one because that's just kind of where my brain goes. That's like the start state, and this is sort of the initial thing that we want to see. So I'm just dragging and dropping this character in here. And if I come up here to our hierarchy, you can see that we have our character medium, the root, right, all of our controls and everything. Now what I want to do is you can see that this is still an FBX. Its little icon up here is blue and gray, as opposed to all these game objects, which are just gray. That means they're just scene objects. This FBX is being read as an FBX, sort of like a prefab. So if I right click on it and go to prefab and unpack completely, you'll see that now the icon is just a gray scene object like the rest of these game objects, right? So I could select this, and I can hit F2, and I can call this player, okay, because that would be the root object that has nothing on it, which you could put all your programming and everything. And below it is where the actual mesh is. So the skin mesh renderer is just the mesh itself. If I turn this on and off, okay, or even deactivate and activate it, that's the mesh of our character. And a sibling of it is this root, and this is where all of the joint components live. Okay, so we're going to collapse that. So to just give this some simple animations, what I'm going to do is have this, I'm going to have this root object selected. I'm going to add a component. I'm going to say animator. That's different from animation. We want an animator component. Okay, and you'll see that it has a controller value here, which has nothing in it. An animator component needs a controller to work. So what we're going to do is come over to our animations, right click in here, create animator controller, and we'll just call this player animator controller. So now when I select this player, I can drag and drop this controller into this value. Okay, now what this is, if you double click it, it opens up the animator tab, and it shows you that this is the contents of our animator. Okay, that's what this animator controller is, all of this stuff in here. Okay, these base layers and parameters, but mostly here is what you want to be looking at right now. So I'm going to just organize this like that. Okay, and here is where we want to import our animations. I'm actually going to take this idle animation. I'm going to rename it by hitting F2. I'm going to call it idle old, okay, because that's the one that came with the file. And I'm going to put all three of these into the imported FBX folder. Okay, so now our animations folder just has the controller and the imported FBXs folder. In the imported FBXs folder, we could look at all of these FBXs that have our animations. The reason I'm separating these is because we want to extract the animation file out of them and put only the animation files in this folder. This isn't 100% necessary. You could just put everything in one big folder, but like I said, I find that it becomes very unwieldy and it just kind of becomes sloppy file management. So imported FBXs in here, I'm going to select the breathing idle. These two are the ones that we got from Mixamo. So I'm going to select the breathing idle. I'm going to drop down right here, and you can see that it has this little triangle. This is our animation clip, the breathing idle file. Okay, now you'd be tempted to just drag and drop it in here, and you can. But the problem with this is that if you ever make any adjustments to this, it might change while you have Unity open, but that change will be temporary. And the next time you boot up Unity, your changes will be gone. So what you need to do is have it be its own separate file. With it selected, you could just hit Control D, and it just duplicates the animation clip and nothing else. So now you can see that we have this breathing idle as a standalone file. And now this is not dependent on this FBX. It's its own separate thing now. So now I could take that and I could drag and drop it just into the animations folder. Okay, so if I go to the animations folder, now I just have this breathing idle. So I'm gonna come up here and say loop time. Okay, so this breathing will now loop. If you don't check this, it'll go through the animation once and your character will just freeze on the last frame that it ends on. Okay, so we want that loop time. And I'm gonna get rid of this old breathing idle. Okay, I'm just gonna select that state here in our animator and hit delete. And now I'm gonna drag and drop our new one in here. Okay, that's what we want instead. Now, this breathing idle clip is a file in itself and it's called breathing idle, but you could select the state here in the animator and change the name of the state to something else. So I could just put this as idle, okay, the lowercase I. It's still using the breathing idle clip, but we don't need to name the state the same thing. It just automatically names the state after the clip for whatever you dragged in there. That's why by default, it just called the state breathing idle because that was the name of the file. So we have this idle playing, and you can see that it has this entry state here, and then it draws a line down to idle. So that means that when this animator starts up on entry, as in when it first starts off doing whatever it does, it's gonna go straight to here, and it's gonna be playing this idle animation. So you can see that represented in our scene. If I hit play, our character is playing its idle animation, and that will just loop indefinitely. And let's just do that for a couple more of these, right? Just so you can get used to this idea of how to organize these files. I'm gonna go to import FBXs. Don't need this one anymore, right? The breathing idle. Okay, so I'm gonna take this walking animation and I'm gonna select the walking clip down here, the little triangle, hit Control D or Command D on a Mac. You can also do it from the menu up here. So as long as it's selected, you can go to Edit, Duplicate, okay? And now we have it here. I can drag and drop this just into animations. So now we have a walking and breathing idle. Go over to the animator and put walking in here. Now you'll see that walking is gray and it doesn't have any arrows pointing to it. This is where you start making decisions about how you programmatically switch the animations of your animator. Be sure to check out our other videos to learn all the various features of Playmaker. Links to more learning resources are in the description.